Yeah, we're now live, Chair.
Brilliant, thank you. So a proper good morning to everybody. Thank you for joining us for this meeting of the Climate Change, Environment and Growth Executive Advisory Panel. This is a reconvened meeting that was due to be held on the 27th of September, but there was an executive committee meeting, so we've just swapped things around and you get 2 meetings this month, so what more could you want? So the first item is apologies for absence. Do we have any?
No, I haven't received any apologies.
Perfect, thank you. Next is members' declarations of interest. Does anybody need to declare anything? No, doesn't look like it, so that's good. And then we've got the minutes of the meeting held on the 31st of August. Hopefully you've all had a chance to read through those, are happy with what has been recorded as part of those. So I can see heads. Tim, Councillor Allibone.
Just come in on that. On page 5, when you're talking about fly tipping, I did meet with Dean Granger the other day looking at fly tips in my area. And he informed me, I said, well, we really ought to have some cameras up in some of these out of the way rural hotspots. And he said, we do have 6 cameras as yet unused, the new Hawk cameras, which are about 5,000 each. And he said only 2 people have been trained to use them, Dean himself and Mark Rennekins, who's since retired. He said, but we have no enforcement powers now because those powers have been transferred to the old sort of East Northants side of the unitary. So he said they're not trained in the cameras but can do the enforcement. We know how to use the cameras, but we can't follow anything up. And it does seem a bit ridiculous that we've got £30,000 worth of cameras unused that could be working to good effect. And I don't know whether that's something who I should bring that up with. I'll just bring it up now because I was reading about the fly tipping element of the minutes.
Perfect, thank you. Well, I can see Graham Kane's hand has gone straight up.
Thank you, Councillor Penton. Apologies, my video doesn't seem to be connecting, but I hope you can hear me. Thank you, Councillor Allibone, for raising that. I can add a little bit of clarity and happy to have the conversation with you in another forum if that's more appropriate. The situation that you've described is not one that I entirely recognise. My perspective and understanding of the situation is different from that. We do have enforcement officers working right across Wellingborough, including, of course, right across North Northants. We do have cameras, we do use those cameras, and in actual fact, the enforcement team has been particularly successful recently in a number of cases with regard to fly tipping offences, both in issuing fixed penalty notices and actually also taking offenders to court and getting some successful prosecutions. So we are very much a team that works across North Northants. We have the technology, we have the powers, and we are having success in tackling fly tipping. But I'm more than happy to provide more details in another forum of conversation if you would like.
Okay, thank you for that, Graham.
Thank you. Thanks.
Perfect, thank you. So are there any other matters arising from the minutes? Are we happy with those? Looks like we're all good. So I'm going to move on to the first substantive item, which is street lighting LED proposal. So I'm going to hand back over to, I believe, to Graham to go through this.
Thank you very much, Chair. Again, I won't say very much, and I'll hand over to my colleague Steve Lilly, who's kindly joined the call and can take you through the slide deck. Just to remind members, we spoke about this item some time ago. I'm sorry, I can't immediately recall the month. We took you through the concept of it. We're just going to go through much the same slides, but to remind you of the concept and the principles behind the proposal. And give you an update on where we are. Obviously, the premise is updating our street lighting with LED lamps in order to reduce our energy use, so it reduces our carbon emissions, but also reduces the costs as well to the council. As you can fully understand, of course, energy prices have changed significantly since we last spoke to you. So it has had an impact on the business case, and Steve will explain a bit about that through his presentation. So I'll hand over to Steve, who hopefully can take you through the slides, which he has prepared. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Steve. Over to you, if you don't mind.
Good morning. Is someone able to present the slide deck?
Uh, I I'm currently having some IT issues, so give me 1 second if I can just change it over. Maybe I'm happy to share
Thank you.
it.
Thank you. I'm using the initial slide deck that has had an updated version, so thank you.
Sorry, 1 second. I'll just I'll just send it through to myself, and I'll
You sure, Raj? I can have
I'll
a go.
start making a few comments in advance of this, in advance of the slide deck coming up. So we had the recent government announcement a couple of weeks back that the energy price was going to be capped for a lot of business uses, and of course this has impacted on street lighting as well. So the good news behind that is that we believe it could be saving in the order of £500,000 this financial year just on the energy cap. We've had some information back from our supplier who was anticipating the rate would be capped at around 32 to 35 pence. Although we believe in hang on, that's good. The slides are going to come up. Okay, so if you go on to the next slide, please, Raj, that will be great. Thank you. Okay, so apologies if you've seen all of this before. Much of this hasn't changed from probably the last time you've seen it. So there's a bit of background in there about the PFI contract, which runs through till 2036. Started in 2011, and we replaced the bulk of the asset with new assets between 2011 and 2016. When we started in 2011, county-wide, the energy usage was around 29 million kilowatt hours, and we've reduced that to 8.6 million annually. So a two-thirds reduction in energy, despite us not using LED in the project. We didn't use LED at the time we started the PFI because the cost of the units was about double what it was now, and it just didn't work out in the financial model. You can see then over the same period, our energy costs have risen from around just over 8 pence a kilowatt hour up to currently about 34 pence a kilowatt hour. And we were forecasting this to rise to over 50p in October. Now, this is what the government cap has changed. We believe internally that the government cap will take our price down to about 27 pence a kilowatt hour. Although our provider is suggesting it will be 32 to 35, but we think we're right on the way the cap's been issued by the government. We won't know that for sure until November when we start to see the invoices coming in. Then there's a bit of background in the report on switch off, where we ended up where we did with the lighting budget being reduced. Then we went through a switch off program. Then we went through the PFI. So currently the two authorities spend around about 6.1 million net on street lighting when you take account of the PFI credits grant of the government of 5 million. So the overall cost of us providing street lighting at the moment is around about 11 million pounds a year. We talk about the lighting budget. If we look back to 2011, we made big decisions about going with the PFI and switching off. Had we done nothing at that point, our energy bill, we'd now be looking at around 12.4 million. So we've made a tremendous impact on the work we've done already. But what it's also done is it's taken us part way down the line to LEDs, which means the LED business case is then harder to achieve because we've already got energy low. But the increase in prices are certainly helping that now. Okay, if you can go on to the next slide, please. That's just a picture of current lanterns, just for information. So whiz over that one. I'm sure you've all seen those. So the proposal now is to replace all our lanterns with LED, and the current energy costs in North Northamptonshire for those existing units is 1.16 million, and we believe now there's a budget pressure of around about 361,000 post the energy cap from the government for this financial year. So converting to LED is going to reduce our energy usage by 2/3. Now, what I'm going to say is, I think I cannot see how the energy cap can be maintained by the government. I fully expect it to go back up and then to continue to rise in future years. Much of this is being impacted by the current situation in Ukraine, and I cannot see, even if that ended, how the energy prices are going to come back down quickly, because I think a lot of countries will struggle to deal with Russia for a number of years. So I think these high prices are here to stay. So the conversion onto the conversion program, it'll take about 120 weeks to complete. So it's just over a 2-year program. So it's not quick. We've got across the county, we've got 40-something thousand assets to replace, and we think for the next 3 financial years we could avoid about just over £1 million of additional costs above the current budget, and save 350,000 below the current energy budget over those 3 years. Then beyond that, when we're not paying out, by the time we pay off the capital at the end of the program, the energy savings go up massively. We currently procure green energy, so our lighting is effectively carbon zero, but the energy reductions we'll get from LED just within Northampton are just over 500 tons carbon annually, based on the current generation factors. These generation factors go down year on year as more wind energy, solar energy comes into the network. So for the North Northamptonshire Council, the energy used by our street lighting assets is just under 30% of the council's entire energy usage through the laser contract. So that excludes the catering area, which is through a slightly different procurement element. So we think street lighting is probably between 20 and 25% of the council's entire energy use. So it's quite a significant lump. Okay, next slide, please. This is an indication of the sort of lanterns you're going to be looking at. The model on the right-hand side is more likely now, because that company have managed to. I've got a new generation of product which is cheaper than the alternative on the left-hand side. So we're likely to be looking at a unit that's more like what we're looking at now on the right-hand side. These are, in my opinion, a much better unit, the better built. So that's encouraging that the prices come down. Next slide, please. I looked in here at a few alternative sort of options with street lighting. So we get asked a lot about alternative things, including solar panels. Well, our existing street lights, the columns are not the strongest columns. They're there to be, they're very corrosion resistant. They'll last a long time, but they won't take a lot of load. So it's not an option for us, because a big solar panel on top of any of our street lights just wouldn't last. And we don't even think that the current batteries in them, they're okay for occasions where movement triggers the light to come on with solar panels. But the minute you have them on all night through the winter, they're just not going to store enough energy during the day to stay on all night. So unfortunately, solar is just not an option for us. We've got to have an electrical supply to our lights. Next one that usually comes up, because we, as you will all know, we've got a fairly low lighting standard across the entirety of the county. And we sometimes get questions about, well, can we change the lighting levels if we feel the standards are too low? We can't really do that, because the optics in the lanterns that we've got just will not throw the light far enough to increase the levels. So if we wanted to do something like that, we're going to need more capital input to increase the number of lighting columns across the network, and that isn't really a viable solution for us. We've also, part of our current policy includes park night lighting. and this will be possible if we wanted to follow that when we've installed the LED lanterns, because as part of that, we're going to put centrally managed control into all of the street lights, which means that we can experiment or make permanent that from somebody sitting at a computer, rather than currently, if we wanted to change, like a change to a lighting column, switching off at night, we'd have to go and visit each column individually. And I think the cost is around £80 to £100 per column just through doing that. So this project will at least allow that to happen in future. I think that's the end of the slide. So if anybody's got any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Great, thank you for going through that, Steve. Are there questions from members? I know that we've looked at this before, but obviously it's an important one. Councillor Buckingham.
Sorry, just taking myself off mute. Thanks very much. Some impressive statistics there on uses, etc. So congratulations for that. Some of our communities are having problems where there is street lighting and the safety of the community. I wonder if there is any thoughts about collaborative working with safer communities, because I know that we're talking about extra lighting in places for safety reasons. So is this now our opportunity to make sure that we work with other departments so that we can do things just once collaboratively in terms of where we need the lighting, or for safety reasons? Thank you.
It's certainly a possibility, but there will be an additional capital cost of providing more lighting. I will say as well that it's not just which are under the PFI contract. There are still lights that were provided on the highway in certain areas by the former borough and district councils too. So it's not always clear cut that the issues with lighting are where the highway lighting is. But I think it's definitely worth looking. It's definitely worth looking at. But it's something that could need a budget. I'm not sure that we'd be able to increase the lighting levels without adding additional lighting columns in. So this project really is.
Can I come back on that then? There would be a capital cost anyway if we were going to do the safety bits. It's just, if it was collaboratively, it may bring the cost down a bit if you're replacing it in certain areas too. And that is my thinking on it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's certainly something we can talk to people about. I don't have an issue with doing that.
I think, Graham, you perhaps wanted to come in there.
Thank you, Chair. That's very helpful. Thank you. Yeah, just to re-emphasise exactly what Steve just said, Councillor Buckingham, you're absolutely right. Where there's an opportunity to collaborate, we will always do that, of course. And if that brings better outcomes for residents, and indeed in this case potentially better value for more money for residents, then we would certainly do that. There will be different circumstances which determine how we deliver that lighting, whether it's part of the PFI, whether we do that separately, but we should certainly be having those conversations to find the best value for money route. So yes, we would certainly do that.
Perfect. Thank you, Graham, and thank you, Councillor Buckingham, on that. Councillor Watt.
Thank you. Yeah, a couple of questions. The existing lighting that was put up, I thought it was LED lighting. And do we have to change the unit at the top? Could you not just retrofit another bulb into the existing unit? That sounds cheaper than actually replacing the whole thing. Future adoptions, presumably they will be dictated that they will be LED lighting. The other thing is, I'm a bit surprised that they were having this facility to turn off lights at night, because I remember the original selling of replacing lights was that they could turn off lights at night. So I'm a bit surprised that we couldn't turn it off. And I think everybody's frozen.
Yeah,
You,
I think we've just come back.
Yeah. Only
Yeah,
Harriet
mine
was moving.
Right. In terms of let me run through those one by one. So in terms of retrofitting the lanterns, and in terms of the part night light, not every street light across the entirety of the county has centrally managed controls on it. The original PFI project was going to do that, but then it was reduced to a target of about 50% for financial reasons at the time to make the PFI viable. So yes, not every street light has the capability of doing that. It's not something we currently do either, and we wouldn't do it without a will to do that either at the moment. But it's a facility that's there if we wanted to trial it in the future. Yes, none of the street lights that were put up through the PFI are LED. Again, we did look at that at the time that the whole PFI was tendered, but the cost of LED units were, I think, around about £400 a unit at the time, whereas we were looking at under £200 a unit for the current lanterns we have in the PFI. So that didn't stack up. We have done some LED replacements throughout the county, and county-wise, we've probably got around 4,000 to 6,000 LED lights. So yes, you will see there are some LED lights out there. In terms of retrofitting existing lanterns, it's as expensive as replacing the lantern, to be perfectly honest, going and changing them. So the benefit that changing the lantern has is that we end up with another 20-year warranty on the lanterns, whereas for some of our lanterns we've probably only got 10 years of warranty left as well. So it will certainly give us additional life, and of course at the same time we'll be dealing with everything onto a centrally managed system with better control and better direct reporting of faults. So we're not reliant going forward on night scouting to pick up lantern faults. We'll know straight through the system that everything's gone into fault.
Can I just come back to that? How much per lantern is it costing us, and could we have a map of all of the units that are going to be replaced? Because are they all going to get replaced in the parishes and the villages as well?
No, the parishes and villages are not covered in this proposal. So all the parishes that were looked after formerly by Catchments and Corby district and borough councils are not included in this. This is only the highway lighting covered in the PFI contract. In terms of a map, the current council's interactive mapping has a map where pretty much all of the lights are. At the moment, I need to make some updates to that. But we've got 40-something thousand lights showing on those maps, and only a small proportion of those are LED. So if you look at the dots on the mapping that you can bring up when you add the features on the interactive mapping, you'll see where all the lights are in any event, and you'll see in those that there's no dots in the parishes for the highway lights.
Thank you, Steve, for covering those questions. Move to Councillor Dale now.
Thanks, Steve. Great to hear about this. Obviously, the cost savings are great, but also the environmental impact of reducing those energy costs. I was just going to ask about maintenance, because obviously this is about capital thing. I was wondering if replacing with LEDs will have an effect on the maintenance costs as well, because obviously LEDs, I guess, last longer than the existing systems. So I was just wondering if you had any information on that.
Yes, the financial model that we've come up with has got an allowance for reduced maintenance costs. We've only just gone through a deed of variation on the current PFI contract with Balfour Beatty. We're not entirely sure what that's going to be at the moment, but we're anticipating it could be about a 10% reduction in the maintenance costs. Obviously, some of the costs we pay annually on the street lights for things like electrical checks, structural safety checks on the columns. Yes, dealing with faults, but also the PFI contractor retains the risk of damage. So if a vehicle damages any street light, they replace it at their cost, but that's built into the annual cost as well. So yes, we are expecting the maintenance cost to go down, and that is factored in the model as well.
Sorry, can I ask what are the maintenance costs at the moment?
I've just lost audio, if you can hear it.
Sorry, I was just wondering if you knew what the maintenance costs were offhand at the moment.
The annual maintenance costs per unit are around about somewhere in the 30 to 40 pound mark. The other thing that's interesting to note in this as well is the current energy crisis has also gone out into our contracting costs as well. The PFI contract annual inflation rate is based on RPIX, the retail price index, retail price indices, and we're currently looking at a 15 to 20% increase for the next financial year. So that cost could go up from 30 something pounds to 40 something pounds next year on the PFI. So the impact on of the Ukraine situation is far outside just energy. It's also impacting on the costs of running. So yes, it's around about, if you think 35 to 40 pounds a unit at the moment minimum.
Great, thank you. So are there any other questions from members on that at this point? I can't see any other hands. I know Councillor O'Hara did have a question, but had some difficulties with her IT, and actually Councillor Watt asked the question. So that was covered off there. Graham Kane, just want to come in.
Thank you, Chair. Just to finalise and talk about next steps really for members so they're aware of what's happening next. So we have been discussing with colleagues through our capital approvals process to secure the funding for this project. So that is an ongoing conversation. Should that be successful, we then will come to executive in, I think it's December time, with an updated proposal for executive to consider whether they want to go ahead with the investment. So I just want to be open, transparent, realistic with members that it's not a done deal, so to speak. There's still formal approvals to be made based on the business case that Steve and colleagues have been putting together. But that is our intention, is to secure that funding. And then if that's successful, we would hope to start the rollout program in April of next year. And as Steve says, it'll take a couple of years or so to actually implement all the upgrades. So it's not sort of an overnight job. It will take some time to work through all those lanterns and get them updated. So we'll take the program forward, and hopefully you'll see more about that when we go to executive later in this year.
Thank you, Graham, for providing that bit of extra information there. Those were good questions, and what I've done is I've noted down the comments that members of the EAP made, so that those can be fed back in as part of the ongoing process in relation to this. Obviously a big project, and thank you to Steve and Graham for taking us through that this morning. I appreciate it. We are going to move on to the next item now, and over the last few months, one of the topics that we've wanted to discuss in some greater detail has been flooding, quite rightly, because it's an important matter that affects, unfortunately, people locally. So I'm going to hand over to Sarah Parr in a second, who's going to take us through the RAIN project, and I'll let her explain the acronym there, just to give us some more information about what the council is doing locally in relation to flooding. Sarah, over to you.
Hello. I've had lots and lots of IT issues today, so just to let you know if I disappear or anything like that, I've got about 3 laptops open, so I'll appear on another one. I'm here to just talk about RAIN, which is a project in Northamptonshire funded by the Environment Agency. It's in 2 very distinct catchment areas. Is my presentation showing? Yes. Okay. Yes. Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks, Raj. RAIN. So RAIN stands for Resilience and Innovation in Northamptonshire, and I'm just going to talk you through where we are with it and what's happening. Okay. So the Flood and Coastal Resilience Innovation Programme, which you'll hear around as called FGRIP, is part of the government's National Flood and Coastal Erosion Risk Management Strategy for England. The strategy's vision for England to be a nation ready for and resilient to flooding and coastal change. We at Northamptonshire are one of 25 projects across England that demonstrating how practical, innovative actions can improve resilience to flooding. Resilience being the big word here. We're not going to stop flooding. In fact, year on year, it will be steadily getting worse. And I certainly don't need to explain to this group why that might be happening. The FGRIP programme will learn from doing. We will share lessons widely. The evidence gathered throughout this programme will guide future approaches in flood and coastal risk management. If we could go to the next slide. Okay, so here, this slide just shows where we are in the programme. As you can see, it started in 2020 when an expression of interest was submitted to the Environment Agency by the County Council, a flood officer in the County Council. That expression of interest was assessed in 2021, and the programme, FGRIP, officially launched its successful 25 projects in March 2021. Now, that success is just the expression of interest success. We don't have the full funding yet. However, we have been doing a lot of work in the last year to make sure that happens. We've been formally engaging with partners, getting a really, really good team on board, and preparing our outline business case. At the moment, we're awaiting our OBC approval, and we're hoping to hear as soon as tomorrow whether we've been successful or not. At the moment, we're just working through some modelling questions with the EA, and after that, we'll be starting project delivery and evaluation. If you could go to the next slide. Okay, back to that word RAIN. RAIN means different things for different people. Some see growth, some see life, inconvenience, but for those who have been flooded, and a lot of people will be meeting through this project, and people you guys will be meeting, it means exactly the same thing. It means cost, loss, heartbreak, utter despair, anxiety, and then a feeling of absolute loss of control. The RAIN project aims to change these feelings, to build confidence, to reduce fear, to empower, and to show people in Northamptonshire, in the Harpers and Wootton catchments who have experienced flooding, that something's going to be put in place, that they're going to be listened to. People are at the centre of RAIN, and RAIN will happen when you can't just build a wall to sort out those flooding issues. Next slide, please. Okay, the catchments. This will be discussed a lot, especially with residents who don't happen to be in these 2 catchments, but I'll go through why these 2 catchments were chosen. Our project catchments is the Harpers and Wootton Brook. There have approximately 350 flood incidents reported since detailed records commenced in 2012. Traditional hard engineering flood schemes are not considered viable in these areas. And after modelling took place, these were the 2 catchments who are most likely to flood, and will respond best to this holistic approach that we're trying to look at through RAIN. The Harpers Brook area includes communities of Brigstock, Lowick, Sudborough, Stanion and South Corby, so that sits in North Northants, and the Wootton Brook area includes Collingtree, Wootton West, East Hunsbury, Hunsbury Meadows and Hackleton, and within each of these catchments there are approximately 500 properties who are currently at risk, with many more likely to become at risk with the effect of climate change. If we could put the next slide on, please. In both of our catchments, we are working at 3 spatial scales to implement flood mitigation and increase knowledge. I liken this holistic approach to a strained muscle. When this happens, you don't just fix one thing, especially if there's no quick fix like an operation, which would be the large engineering fix in flood terms. So you rest, ice, change how you exercise, take pain relief. This is our approach to problems in these neighbourhoods. We treat the catchment, engage with the community and target the properties within them. Next slide, please. Okay, the RAIN project aims to build confidence, to reduce fear, to empower, to show those who are at risk or have experienced flooding that it's possible to be resilient, to be prepared and to recover. The RAIN project challenges the traditional hard engineering concepts within flood resilience while also demonstrating how major capital projects can produce significant benefits through community engagement, property resilience and the natural environment. We are working with 2 very different catchments to test how resilience actions at 3 different spatial scales, which is catchment, as I've said before, community and property, how they combine, interact, and the cost benefits of those actions individually and together. Next slide, please. Our project is based on collaboration, bringing experts together. To build resilience at our 3 scales, we have 5 work streams that all involve local partners and stakeholders. We meet weekly with all the partners, and it has been at these meetings where the project has really started to take shape and gain an identity. I think our biggest success so far has been the relationship building that has taken place with all the people involved from the groups you see here. This project really does feel like everyone is working towards the same goals and pulling in that same direction. If you go to the next slide. The West Northants project team. So we're running the project, and it's run by West Northants. However, like I've said before, we do cover North Northants with regards to the Harpers Brook. We've got our project exec, who many of you may know, Ruth Burnham, who is she sits on the RFCC. She's got local flood knowledge. She's delivered previous Pathfinder projects. We've got a project manager, project program manager, which is Alan. Again, some of you will know Alan through his work at the County Council. He's got a local flood knowledge and his established relationship with stakeholders, project program management experience. Then there's me. Some of you know my background, experience of managing teams across multiple work streams, and I've got experience in delivering biodiversity and habitat creation projects, including risk assessments and management. And then we have our project support, who is here with me today and helping with IT because we're having so many problems. And that's Kate, and she's our project officer. She's a master's graduate. She's got good GIS experience, and she's got, and her background is climate change. Could I have the next slide? Thank you. Okay, so work package 2. This is catchment scale, NFM, which you'll hear it referred to, which is natural flood maintenance. This is where we're working with the landowners and farmers in the upstream catchments to implement nature-based solutions to slow and reduce the flow. We then have 3 KIL working in work package 2 as well, and they have established the East of England's lens, which is landscape enterprise networks. they've got which is where we'll be doing where we'll be bringing landowners through that process. And we've already done the first year of Lens. I'm happy to talk about that in more detail if anybody's interested offline. They have contacts and proven progress for negotiating between demand and supply aggregators to seek common solutions to obtain funding from multiple commercial sources. We're currently working with this team to bring on new funders, including an insurance firm who are looking directly to fund flood resilience measures, which will stretch our NFM further. There's been some really productive work happening between a few of our work packages. So work package 2 and our modelers, who happen to be work package 5, and they've created these maps using a mix of knowledge, hydraulic modelling, and actually speaking to farmers and landowners. Now that's never happened before. We've never done those 3 things together. And these maps have been created to see where NFM will work. So where will these nature-based solutions work? Because it's all about having it in the right place with nature-based solutions. So we've already modelled and done this exploratory work in both the catchments, as you can see here. These are, if you go to the next slide, please. These are our blueprint for our NFM delivery, giving our land advisor confidence to talk with farmers about real change they can make to people's chances of flooding. Our landowner advisor who we have on board is actually a farmer. We've found the farming industry is one of the hardest to engage with, so we have a farmer actually doing that for us within the project, and it's working really, really well at the moment. And after speaking with the other 25 projects, the ones that do NFM, they have found that the most difficult, so we're really pleased that that's working well. Next slide. Work package 3, that's our community and resilience. So work package 3 focuses on community engagement, building resilience communities, and this will involve working with communities in our catchments to provide training, events and information, so that our communities are aware and understand the risk, while also understanding how to prepare and recover. We'll be building on the previous flood warden roles to create resilience champions. It'll be work package 3 where we'll really need help from parish councils, ward councillors. We've contacted the local MPs to really let us know who we need to be engaging with in that work package, and that's one that the West Northants will be running themselves. Our work package 4 is property flood resilience. Now this is building on the preparedness of work package 3. We're going to be empowering resilience and recoverability through PFR work. Sorry, have we moved on slides? Yeah. We will implement the findings of the Oxcam Pathfinder project to deliver property flood resilience measures in up to 100 properties that are most vulnerable to flooding and climate change. We'll seek to align delivery with energy efficient measures and collaborate with a PFR flood compliance platform. If any of these terms you need me to discuss further on, I'm happy to forward any information on after the meeting, because I know that there's a lot of information all at once. If we go on to our next slide. Work package 5 is our hydraulic modelling work package. So we are working with HR Wallingford, who have been supporting the development and implementation of best practice in flood water management for over 70 years. They've got so much experience in this. If you go on to the next slide, which just gives you a little example of, if you can press play, Raj, I don't know if it will. It's just, this just shows you what modelling looks like when they put it through. So once they're modelling an area, it really shows you where that flooding will take place and where we need to be down to sort of the last metre, where we need to be looking at building NFM or protecting people's properties or engaging with communities. So it really has given us all the information we need for what we've done, and that we've already done that within the project. Okay, next
yeah,
slide.
sorry, I don't think that's going to work on the PDF format. So
okay, no worries, no worries. I can always forward it to people afterwards. Okay, so if we go on to the next slide. So far, we've achieved in this first year the processes and workflows between the various modelling involved, and the Lens process has been refined. and adapted to ensure better visibility of required information outcomes between all parties. Our baseline hydraulic modelling for both catchments has been carried out in more depth than ever before in those areas. We've engaged with farmers and landowners across both catchments through RNRP, and we now have a provisional list of sites and measures for potential NFM. Planning and community engagement, we've currently shaped the engagement of the project, including how it can be tailored to each of our communities. But with that, again, I'd like to say we need help here. I need everybody's input, as much input as possible from you all. The international procurement process for the PFR delivery schemes now began, starting with the intention of procuring a managing agent through the EA's national PFR framework. And we've submitted our OBC. Next slide. I'm going to skip that one because that's quite a wordy one, but it's something I can come back to. It's just about the benefits of NFM really, but I'm conscious of time. If we go to, so by the end of the project, so that's what people really want to know about. It's a 5-year project. It's not going to be a sprint. It's a real marathon. It's going to take time. But by the end, we are hoping to have delivered resilience actions across the catchment, the community and property, and understood the cost benefits of these measures to help evidence schemes where traditional capital schemes are not viable. So it's at that point we are hoping that we'll be able to push out what we've learned through across other areas in Northamptonshire and across the country. We'll have used an innovative partnership funding model to deliver nature-based solutions, which is LENS. We're not the only FGRIP project to do that, but we're the only FGRIP project that have already done a year, the first years of that already, so we're quite proud of that. We will have embedded, hopefully, behavioural change by increasing community knowledge, awareness and ownership and resilience through the catchments, so letting people know what they can do to feel empowered. We will have evaluated and produced a framework to assess how resilience measures interact and work collectively together at different spatial scales to improve holistic resilience to the community. These aims do all sound really technical, but we do believe, in simpler terms, by the end of the project, we will have made Northamptonshire a better, safer, more comfortable and happier place to live for some of our residents. RAIN will be giving them the confidence to empower themselves, but also developing a trust between them, the council and the Environment Agency. As a council, it's our aim to improve neighbourhoods in our boroughs. And with this project, we think we really are going to do that. Okay, that's all my slides. I'm just open to questions now.
Thank you, Sarah, for going through that. It's obviously a really important project, and the holistic element of it is clear in that, in the detail that the modelling goes into within meters. I think that will give a lot of reassurance to people in terms of the detail there. So hands are going up in terms of questions. We've got Councillor Allibone first.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Sarah, you were saying that farmers were most difficult to engage with, and I'm just wondering, as a farmer, and most of my farming colleagues are very interested and supportive of environmental issues, and I'm just wondering, when you say difficult to engage with, is it because they're difficult to contact because they're at weird hours or pinned down, or is it because they're just not interested? I'm just intrigued to know which one it is.
With regards to what we've experienced really good engagement with farmers, because we're using a farmer to do that engagement. So he understands things like when they'll be about, what sort of information they need, what other information over the years they've been fired across with ELMS and different funding mechanisms that have come to them and haven't worked or have worked. So he understands all those things that they've been through previously. So we're finding engagement, it's happening really well, but other areas in the country where they're trying to use council officers to engage with farmers, it's just not working quite as well. And I think it's because farmers have had a lot offered and it's not always worked out quite how it was explained initially. So they're very cautious to sign up to things, completely understandably. and they're waiting for the changes with regards to the EU, or they're waiting for changes on what's gonna come about, and it's that cautiousness of farmers which is the hard part to get them engaged and on board with a new project like this, and something they've never heard of. But like I said, we're finding our local landowners and farmers really, really good to work with, like incredibly good. But I do think that's down to the fact that we're using a farmer to engage with them.
Well, thank you for that, Sarah. I'm glad to hear that most of us aren't with the brush of being uncooperative. I think obviously we're not led, but we're all influenced by DEFRA and how DEFRA are coming up with new plans. DEFRA isn't working particularly well at the moment. I think that's a given. But obviously we respond where we can on a long-term industry. But thank you for the answer.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dell.
Thanks, Chair. So this is great to see. I was wondering how at the end of the 5 years, how this project will impact or on other areas around Northamptonshire, because of course those aren't the only areas that flood. And I didn't know if you could comment on, in the meantime, if there's any work happening, say in the north of the county, with more emergency flood risks. For example, in August, my neighbour's gardens flooded up to 18 inches running through houses and things, and there's nothing really in here about that. And I was wondering about, if North Northamptonshire's got flood officers, and I mean, I've been trying to engage recently to get the floodmobile, which I saw last year in Pytchley, and is a brilliant bit of kit with the people that run across, to come to Catchments. And I haven't really heard anything, because obviously a lot of these issues, as you said, like hard landscaping and like they're not going to be a solution for a lot of these issues. So we need to sort of educate residents about how they can make changes to perhaps their own property to protect themselves from flood risk. And I didn't know if you could comment on if there was any news on this, if this was going to be happening. Yeah, because I think the floodmobile is a great resource, and it'd be great for me to see it come to Kettering, so I could get all my neighbours along to go and sort of see how they can protect their own properties from flooding. Thanks, Sarah.
Okay, thanks for that. Yes, the floodmobile is available for anybody that wants to rent it out, and we have made it available to the North Northampton Emergency Planning Team, and we're hoping that they will take us up on that and allow us to bring the floodmobile into Kettering or anywhere where people think it might benefit. There's a small cost with regards to getting experts involved in that as well. So we normally would send out the floodmobile with two of our experts, who I think you've met, Des, Mary, and Pola, who are excellent at advising customers and residents on what to do. I would love to see the floodmobile on the marketplace soon. And I certainly, the last I heard, the emergency planning were trying to sort that out, but
I've spoke to Matt in North Emergency Planning. He was asking about the floodmobile.
Okay.
As far as I know, I don't think anything's been actually like set date-wise or anything,
Okay.
but they definitely are. But they have inquired.
Brilliant. So Kate's, she does all the floodmobile bookings, and she hasn't had anything booked in yet, but your emergency planning team over at North Northampton have been asking. I'll chase that for you, Des, and let you know where we are with that exactly, because I think that would benefit residents a whole lot. As for the learning and after the project and during, whatever we learn, we are happy to share with and let what we learn benefit the whole of Northamptonshire. These projects, and we'll be learning things from other projects as well. So there's 25 FWIP projects, all of which have to be innovative, all of which have to provide something new. So 25 different types of answers to flooding is happening over the next 5 years. And we're hoping that all of the learning from those projects can be pushed out across the whole of England, because that's the whole point in them. But yeah, like I said, in the meantime, we're happy to support the floodmobile wherever it goes. I'll certainly turn up and help advise customers in Waverley Close. When that happened, we've got one flood officer over at West Northampton. She happened to be on holiday, so it was. I saw all the turmoil and that what people go through when they have flooding, and it's definitely something that we want to help with. So we are happy to help. If it doesn't end up going to Kettering, everybody's invited to go to where we go in Harper's Brook. So it will come to Corby, because Corby, there's part of Corby that's in Harper's Brook. So it will be very widely advertised where the floodmobile will be. So if it doesn't come to Catching, which I think it will, we will make sure you're aware of when it's over at Corby or Brigstock.
Thank you for that. Some useful tie-ups there. Councillor Buckingham.
Thank you very much. You do like your acronyms, don't you? NFM, what does that stand for, please?
I did say nature-based solutions. It's it's about the catchment area. So it's creating off-water storage areas, leaky dams, tree planting, that kind of thing. Unfortunately, flooding is full of acronyms. I've had to learn. I've been on a steep learning curve because I've only been in the industry 6 months, but yeah, I still have to. Sorry about my dog constantly whining and barking. If she was in here, she'd be barking. So it's either whining or barking.
It's fine. I have a few questions then. One is about the team. So the team is based in West Northamptonshire, but you will stretch out to North Northamptonshire, just around the Harper's Brook area. Wonder why you went to the brooks rather than the rivers, but understand that there is the opportunity to move water to flood areas, etc., before it gets to the rivers. So I'm.
Do you want me to just briefly explain why those areas were chosen?
Yeah.
I didn't write the application, so I wasn't involved in that early stage. But from looking into it, it's those were the two areas that were flooded the most and that would respond the best through our modelling information to this type of flood resilience. But in particular, where a large engineering change won't help. So there will be particularly with rivers, sometimes an engineering feature will help with these particular neighbourhoods and communities that wasn't viable.
And I can see the whole benefits of WP3 in terms of involving the community. One of the things that I'm pushing for quite a lot is that our brooks are maintained in a way that they're looked at regularly to find out where the problems will be. So I know you're doing mapping and things, but especially through our towns, it's where you will get blockages where people have thrown things into the brooks and or people aren't taking their riparian responsibilities correctly. So at least you're managing what's going on through there. It's easier to do in the countryside than it is in our urban areas. So I find that part, involving the communities, will be absolutely invaluable, but only if there's joined up thinking. And really, what happens if the outline business case doesn't go through? What are the alternatives?
If the outline business case doesn't get accepted by the Environment Agency as a viable project, we won't get the funding. So North Northants and West Northants will miss out on the project. We've gone through 3 assurers rounds at the moment. We're on the 3rd, and we've just got one question that's being that we're going through at the moment about the modelling. With regards to things being blocking rivers and things like that, that all needs to be reported through to the council and the Environment Agency. If you would need more advice on that, it would be a day-to-day sort of flood and water team that you'd need to talk to, or emergency planning. It's not something that the project has. It's not in the project. If you
okay.
So we're
Thank you. And the last one is the timeline for other parts of the county. So you're focusing on these two brooks, but we've got Gretna Brook, we've got Willow Brook, we've got all the other tributaries of the River Rise, the Welland, as well as the Nene. So, you know, for me, it's not a one size that fits all. So how will you take this to other parts of the county, and what are the timelines for that? Or are you just learning from?
It's a learning program. So FGRIP's a learning program. It's about innovation and learning. Like I've said, the two catchments that were picked up through modelling as being the most at risk and the most susceptible to climate change and the most will respond the best to our type of resilience that we're putting forward were Harper's Brook and Wootton Brook. If we'd have applied for more, we might not have been able to do as good a work in those areas. So it's about quality resilience in those areas and the learning from that, hopefully a council. So it wouldn't be me that would be able to push that across the whole of the council. It would be a council's decision on whether they wanted to push what was learned in the FGRIP RAIN project into other areas. There would be funding involved, and that's not something I can comment on really. All I can comment on is that the funding that we've applied for, that hopefully we'll have and know about in the next week or so, we'll be able to help those communities.
Thank you very much, and sorry for my questions.
No worries.
Thank you. Councillor Watt.
Thanks very much. I've scribbled lots down. I'll see if I can work out what I scribbled down. You said you could help 100 homes at one point, and we can help 100 homes. So have you identified the most at-risk properties so that we're really ready for them? So if something does happen, I'll go on. I noticed from the map, the Harper's Brook map, it's quite a large area. It only includes half of the Cowthick site. There's going to be some extensive building on there, so it only covers half of Cowthick. Or will the attenuation on Cowthick cater for the whole of Cowthick? Going forward, this is a question for Rob and George, actually. Would one of the things that we would take into account would be actually putting up more hard surfaces? And would that come under planning? Because we've identified here an area of land that's at risk of flooding. So are we allowed to put more at-risk stuff? You know, more hard surfaces, more runoff? Or anything like that? Would it have to mitigate its impact of building? And I'm thinking that kind of flooding could be localized or area wide. Localized, it might be a block gully and flood a street, but if that gully was cleared, then it may not flood the street and that house, but it may go downstream and add to other flooding. So one of the things on Graham's plate as well is keeping the gullies clean and clear. So and also, hope you've been keeping track. There's an area of Corby in there, Snatch Hill, which I think is covered by Willowbrook, and my sort of experience there, that is the area that most floods in Corby, an area down near Liddell and the Exeter estate that can have several feet of water in it. So it seems it covers a lot of areas there. Does your work cover, because it has actually got a black line around it, does it cover the that area of Willowbrook? Right, I hope you can make a head and a tail of that.
Okay, so what was the first question?
Yeah. Don't test me. No, It was, you said you're going to help 100 homes. Have you,
Right, okay,
have you
yes.
gone out and identified that the most at-risk homes, and presumably those most at-risk homes will have something on their house insurance because they're really at risk of previous flooding, or they would come up on the insurers at risk because of the position they, the height they are, proximity to a water source.
We've used modelling. The only way to be completely objective on deciding which properties get help and which properties don't is by being very, very scientific. So that's what we've done. At the moment, our modellers are working on that list. We're hoping to have about 250 properties on that list. And those are the people that we'll approach. Those are the people that we'll aim to engage with regards to the flood bill. It's not going to be anybody's choice on who gets help and who doesn't. It will be through a modelling, through a scientific process to tell us who with in line will be most likely to be flooded, and which properties will respond well to property flood resilience, because some properties it's not actually possible to, and other properties it's very, very easy to protect with property flood resilience. I didn't really understand property flood resilience until this project, and I've been out and seen properties that are protected in this way who are flooded, and it's quite incredible how people can protect their properties and have no water come inside and have up to 1 metre of flood water around their property and still be completely protected and completely dry inside. I didn't really think that was possible, but it is, and I actually think property flood resilience is going to be much more common and will be the way forward in flood resilience, particularly due to climate change. It's not always possible to stop it up catchment. It's not always possible to stop a river from overflowing, but it is possible to stop the water coming into your property, which is where the trauma and the damage comes to. It's when the water enters property.
Okay, so the next one was really involved George and Rob. What effect does this have on planning that we've now identified this is a flood risk area?
Chair, I'm happy to take that one. So the situation with planning is, as you may well know, Councillor Watt, are that planning applications are referred to the lead local flood authority as a statutory consultee. And one of the things that they'll look at, and a good example of this is the development of Cowthick, are the measures that are in place there around rainwater attenuation and sustainable urban drainage systems. So Cowthick, as an example, is designed so that actually, to use another sort of term, it sort of consumes its own smoke in water terms. So in actual fact, although you're quite right, new development does put areas of hard surfacing. Designs are in place to ensure that actually it doesn't increase runoff into things like Harper's Brook, as an example, at any worse a rate than would be the case if that had remained as undeveloped land. So that's the way that's dealt with through the planning process.
Thanks. And then there was Graham, cleaning out all the gullies. Do you have a program that just goes around and cleans them, or do you wait for people to report them? Because I see often drains with grass growing out of them, and I think people may have driven past them before.
Thank you, Councillor Watt. Through you, Chair, very happy to answer that. Yes, we have a schedule of a programme of emptying gullies, clearing them out, checking that the grates still lift, checking that the grates themselves haven't lifted up off the tarmac and producing a trip hazard or a hazard for vehicles. So we do have a programme of going around the gullies. But as you also indicate, helpfully, thank you, you can, of course, report them to us. So if a drain has become blocked and it appears to need some maintenance, then, of course, we will look to do that as well. We don't have to wait for the programme, as it were. We will go out and do that. And we've got drainage crews out there every single day, emptying drains, maintaining drains. And I'll post in the chat. I appreciate most members will know this already, but should anybody be watching this at home, I shall post in the chat, if I'm able to, the link to our Street Doctor or Fix My Street website, where you can go on and you can individually select the drain. A little yellow dot pops up when you get to that map, and you can individually select the drain which you have concerns about and report that to us, and then we'll know exactly which gully pots you're concerned about, and we can attend to that. So yes, we approach it in both ways, proactively and also reactively. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Yeah, I think my last sort of comment was about the Willowbrook in Corby. There's nothing for that. I thought it's ringed that round it as the. Is this incorporated with it, because it's not Harper's Brook?
It's within the Harper's Brook catchment. So Harper's Brook, you're not talking just about sort of like a linear part of the brook. That the catchment will be. So what it's saying is that land will affect the Harper's Brook. So by working on that land, you can improve flooding from Harper's Brook. So if it's within the black line, yes, it's part of the project. It's part of what we're looking at. Just comment on a couple of the other things you said there, Councillor Watts. With regards to insurance, we've also got experts on the team to help homeowners tackle those worries about insurance, because that's a huge one, and it's a big one where you're offering people to create resilient homes, and people are worried that it will affect the insurance in their homes, or it will point out to people buying their homes that their house is flooded. So we offer advice on that with regards to insurance, which insurance companies are better for that type, how it sometimes there's a pot of government money which will pay for the flood resilience part of your insurance, and we can advise people on how to access that. And another one part of something else you said there, Councillor Watt, was with regards to planning. The project also involves us offering training for planners to be able to look at new planning applications and deal with and be able to spot where something might be a problem. So that is also part of Work Package 3. Part of engagement is engaging with planners. It's not just about the communities, it's about people who are working in those areas as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for going through that. I think we've covered off the questions that members have got on that. And I know that, Sarah, you've said it's important that we're able to work with you as part of the council on this. So if there are future bits, I'm saying this for you, but I'm sure you'd be happy to talk to people about it, because it's an important one. So thank you again to you and your colleague for going through that with us. Really appreciate it, and to members for the questions on that. That does conclude our items for today. So the next meeting, as I mentioned, there'll be another one this month on the 26th of October, and look forward to seeing you all there, and thanks for coming along today.